Hi guys, welcome back to Schauer Thoughts. My name is Sarah Schauer. This is a podcast for left and right brainers, middle brainers, anyone with the central or peripheral nervous system, anyone with their muscles linked to their nerves. So it should be everyone. But welcome back. Today's episode is going to be a bit of a smattering of everything. Hopefully I'm using that term right. I was just going to go over a couple things today because I realized I've had more intense podcasts over the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to, wind down. Granted, one of the things I'm talking about today, which is hypnotic speech patterns, is not necessarily, it's not a light topic, but it is interesting. I'm going to talk about like how hypnotism generally works and, like misdirection and the psychology of it. And then, your nervous system and your muscles. I won't give away too many secrets. If magicians are listening, your secrets are mainly safe with me. But I'm going to be talking about how some parents accidentally use some hypnotic speech commands and in early childhood. And the thing is children are highly suggestible. And what is... I actually did read this book on magic about probably a year ago. And the magician was talking about the people who are hardest to fool are children. But the thing is why that is because there is no initial connection, like a parent connection with the magician where a child will go up and question everything. However, when it comes to hypnotic speech coming from parents, right, the reason why they're going to be more open to suggestion is because there's an initial connection or rapport, which is essential to building trust and communication. I actually do have more resources on how communication and understanding is basically how you establish trust, which is a connection, which is a setting. It's a position in your brain, and so I'm going to talk about that. But what I'm also going to talk about is there was this Vogue article that came out recently that was, is having a boyfriend embarrassing? And I've read it, and I know some of you might like it or have heard of it. However, I do have to, and I'm going to briefly address this. I probably will make a follow-up podcast episode on this, but being embarrassed of your boyfriend, I understand in the larger cultural narrative, but this is really, really going to have some disastrous effects on compulsory heterosexuality, comp het, and the sapphic community as a whole. Because the thing is when it talks about decentering men, right? Decentering is not abstaining or, depriving yourself of, intimate, loving connections with men. It's just making sure that they're not centered. However, embarrassment is a hop, skip, and a jump away from shame. And so since decentering, the step beyond centering something, is addiction, the closer you get to shame with an addiction conversation, the harder this is really going to be to undo. Shame is not the same as embarrassment. Embarrassment is an acute sense of sadness due to a violation of a social norm. And we're going to talk about that. So it's just something to remember. Grain of salt when it comes to being embarrassed about your boyfriend. That's all I'm going to say. But other than that, before we get into that, how has my week been going? Good. Halloween is now. It is the 31st of October. I don't really think I'm going out tonight. I think I'm going to make some Halloween cookies and just watch some scary movies. Probably The Conjuring, probably Halloween Town. Halloween Town is a Disney Channel movie, but it's Halloween. Why not? It's going to be super relaxing. I was going to share... So I'm talking to this lovely butch, and this lovely butch has BPD, and something I'm doing with her is we're reading this book on BPD. I think it's probably one of the most famous books on BPD, which is I Hate You, Don't Leave Me, and it's about borderline personality. And so she's reading it, and I asked her to go through, she's okayed this, to write down. There's parts in the book that she relates to and she doesn't relate to anymore. So all the parts that she doesn't relate to anymore, the more, I guess, negative behaviors, to write next to it how many years it's been since she could relate to that negative behavior, 4, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, right? Just so, because I'm going to read it after her and learn more about, BPD, and then also see how many changes have been made that I haven't been present for, that I can see how far she's come, because I believe in her, and I know especially when it comes to BPD, a lot of people with BPD beat themselves up for stuff, and so especially when you feel like you can't change or no one sees how hard you're trying. So when I go through the book, I want to read it and see how much she has changed, and understand and communicate to her that I know that she is capable so capable of great change. And so just to you want to understand someone and see their progress and just validate them, to be on the same wavelength. I was thinking about doing the same thing with her for a book on alcoholism, so she can see how long it's been. I mean, you can tell someone your sober date, but when it comes to like alcoholism, there's like, it's just because you get sober doesn't mean that you are removed from a culture of alcohol. So, I would go through and be like, it's been 2 years since I could relate to this, or 3 years, or 3.5 years. Because, when it comes to sobriety, and it's obviously not the same thing as a BPD, but like, you want to, there is this need, this want, this desire to communicate how much you have changed. And just because that means so much to you, especially when you're in a low place and you're, so I might do that with a book on alcoholism. I don't know. There's just there's so many stressful things going on in the world, and I don't feel compelled to drink, but I do sometimes get these pangs of just isolation, because everything with going out has to do with alcohol, and it is, you do feel lonely, and I also just kind of naturally feel lonely. So yeah, we're just gonna be there for each other, and I think that's really cool. But what else has been going on this week? Ooh, I think I'm going to learn ASL. So a couple of weeks ago, or last week, I told you guys I don't have an internal monologue. There's no sound in my brain. So when the sounds come out of my mouth, it's the first time I'm processing with sound, like speech. And so I'm more of a visual tactile learner. And so if you have, that's going to be haptic feedback, like shapes, impressions, gestures, and all this stuff. And so when I was researching, speaking English, the spoken English language, right, there's a narrative flow. And a lot of people tell me that my thoughts are disorganized, and that does make sense relative to the person listening if you use more of a linear narrative flow with English. Because, linear is it's the abstract, it's it's the straightforward, right? However, if I'm using tactile speech, we're getting into the realm of body speaking and awareness and gestures and all this stuff. And it's a lot of people with ASL, use ASL, their structure of speaking is more directional, and I speak more directionally. If you watch this podcast on YouTube, you'll notice that I gesture a lot, to the right or to the left, or I go up a level of abstraction, and I just like to indicate, movement with my hands. And so ASL is actually a lot more compatible with the way that my brain processes. As in it, that makes sense, as there is no sound, right? And I'm trying to communicate. And it would just be helpful for me because, sometimes I want to be able to process things, I guess, quote unquote, out loud. But since it's the first time I'm processing with sound, my words that I use the first time can be a bit jumbled and out of order. A lot of times people with an internal monologue can edit, or they're like, no, that's not right. Let me take this out. That sounds harsh. And so the issue is with processing purely with the first time with speech, especially if you're in a conflict with someone, the words can come out wrong. So knowing ASL, it would just be a compatible way to work things out, quote unquote, out loud with myself in a way that it just works with my brain. And also, it's just good to know ASL. I am reading this book on deaf culture in America, and it is so life-changing already. Oh my gosh. I was going through it, and they were like, okay, let's clear some things up, right? There are so many different definitions of things, and we're going to clear up all the definitions or ways you can use a certain word. And it was just so explicit, straightforward, this is how you talk. And as someone with autism, you always hear people who are deaf, they say always learn ASL from someone who who is deaf, right? Not like someone who just learned it, right? And as someone who's autistic, I can understand exactly why you stress that, because when it comes to like autism and all this stuff, neurotypical people really butcher what autistic people mean. And I mean, I can't even imagine with ASL, it's not English, right? Like it's so to have someone translate and then butcher it when it's a completely different way of processing and expressing, I mean, I know it's probably a bit more serious because you're not using words, and at least with autism, you're using English speaking. So it's just like, don't teach how we process. Don't teach our language. Like, leave that up to someone who is deaf. And I'm like, yes, hell yeah. But so I'm gonna do that. I also posted about that on TikTok, learning ASL to process my thoughts, quote, out loud. And a bunch of people with no internal monologue were like, I did this too. There was one guy who was like, people think I'm like out of my mind because I don't have an internal monologue and I learned ASL. But and so then there was a lot of people who, since I mainly think in shapes, and you're like, well, how can you think in shapes? Impressions, right? Words, literal words on a page are shapes. So a lot of people ask me, well, how do you read out loud in your head if you don't use sound? It's like, well, letters are shapes. So you can read shapes. You can read impressions. You can read someone's face, like in a similar way, right? Like you can tell if someone's upset or someone is laughing. They don't have words. You don't need to say anything out loud to see their facial expression and know what is happening. So you can understand shapes and symbols, right? Like, yeah. So it's going to be cool. I'm going to learn ASL and hopefully become more fluent and understood. I am still taking my science communication class, and I'm going to be working on narrative flow. It is a bit difficult, though. There's like there's like two intersecting translation things. Because a lot of times when I'm speaking here and I'm talking about research-heavy topics like neuroscience, I am translating down like a technical level to make it more applied and easily understood. So it's like translating from like Spanish to English, right? And so there's also me that I have no internal monologue translating into sound. So there's two levels of translation. So me taking the science communication class is I've come up with a sort of ASL, ESL accommodation plan. I'm not actually translating anything from Spanish, and I'm not deaf. I'm using it to draw a parallel. So I'm saying there's two levels of translation that I'm working on. So putting those two translations into a narrative flow, I'm like, this is difficult, but I'm working on it. And I am, reading more fiction to learn how to do it. Because when you read fiction, you read people's internal monologue. And I'm like, oh, this is how people are thinking. Because a lot of times when I get lost in understanding with other people, I'm genuinely trying to find out where they are at in the flow of their internal monologue, because my brain doesn't connect every concept like that. My brain is, since it's more visual, tactile, it would kind of be like an art gallery, right? Where there's a full detailed image with like meaning and, you can read the sign and all this stuff. But between the art pieces, there is going to be blank space, and I know that, you could have a gallery with it's like, oh, you're telling a story. However, the blank spaces are what happens in my brain, right? It's kind of like if I'm not thinking about a certain thing or processing if things are congruent or analogous, similar, different respects, then there's going to be some blank, and if that's not really compatible with how most people think, and so I'm trying to align my thinking so I can communicate better with you guys, because communication is the foundation to life, honestly. I've told you guys a million times that I'm reading The Neuroscience of Choice and Change, What We Value, and there's Chapter 8 is called Small Acts of Sharing, and it talks about like communication, genuine understanding is the foundation to a lot of relationships, and so a lot of times I feel disconnected from other people, and that has been because of, my upbringing with my parents are always just didn't really talk to me, and I moved around a lot, so I did feel incredibly isolated, and I did not know how to connect with people. And then there's just a whole bunch more stuff on that. And so, you know how I was talking about trust is a setting? Trust is connection, right? It's connection is a two-way thing. It's a reciprocal process, you know, and it's in your brain, since your brain maps physical and social contexts the same way. If you don't establish genuine connection and communication, rapport with someone, and trust is not built on that, like you don't trust the connection, then it's you're going to be insecure in that location or with that person, right? There's going to be a lot of uncertainty, and that's where connection pivots to more attachment. And attachment, it doesn't have to be one way. I mean, but it's more like a one-way thing where you're like clinging to someone. So I'm trying to communicate in a way that establishes connection. Maybe not so much trust, because that's a basis of a parasocial relationship, and I don't want you guys to just trust me for no reason. I always want you to look up resources. But it's really cool. You guys should really get this book, What We Value, the Neuroscience of Choice and Change. Also, what's so cool about it is that it talks about synchronicity, and that's what connection is, right? Like being in sync with people. A lot of times people will tell me that how I phrase stuff makes something click for them. And the thing is click is, you're describing the sense of synchronicity, right? Like being in step with someone, you know, sharing understanding. There's embodied understanding, right? Where you can like mirror someone, and then, you know, brain understanding. And so being in sync is like brain and body are connected. It's what makes, you know, great improvers. It's what makes, you know, great musicians who are like duets, or, you know, people who ice skate together. You want to click with the other person. You want to be in sync so you both can trust that someone can perform one move, or, you know, one sort of note, or all these things, and then you can work off each other, and you know generally where each other are going from there, right? From the established location and where you're diverging. And it also does talk about, you know, divergence from the established setting. But I want to talk about like synchronicity a little bit. Oh, actually, you know what? I already talked a little bit about synchronicity. But if you like the way that I phrase stuff and you say it just clicks for you, I'm phrasing it. Most likely what's happening is that since most people use just words, you're like, yes, of course they use words, but words have different weights, and weights, you know, there's different like intentions. However, if you speak in a lot of cliches by definition have lost their meaning. The weight has been kind of stripped away, and they kind of slide past, right? And you need friction. You need something that has grip to it, or like weight to it, for it to makes sense to click in your head. So if a lot of people are speaking with, you know, their words don't match their actions, they use a lot of cliches, they're kind of, they use thought terminating cliches, they're not really thinking about stuff, their words are very slippery, and they're not really like sticking, because the thing is your saliency network, right? New, novel, intriguing. And if you're using the same old recycled sort of words, you're not explaining what the words mean, it's quite slippery. It's going to go in one ear and out the other. So I'm phrasing things in a new way by reapplying the weights to words to give it friction, weigh it down, and stick in your brain. And that's embodied understanding also, like I was talking about with ASL, like since a lot of people who use ASL gesture with their hands and their face, right? They're syncing up, you know, several systems together, and you know, your cerebellum is like your second brain, and that's more you know, a lot of movements. So yeah, I told everyone, I feel like I keep repeating stuff, but I'm integrating information, so I do have to repeat points, is you know, the mechanics of understanding, which is having a grasp on the matter, right? You have a grasp on the concept and on the physical matter, right? So that's how you get like embodied understanding is, you know, usually people are like, oh, repeat the thing over and over again, and then you'll understand it. Yes, because you're going through the motions, right? Hand-eye coordination, you know, that sort of system. So you can, you have the conceptual, the cerebral understanding, but also the mechanical, the embodied understanding. And so the electrical is all like syncing together, which is so cool. Yeah. But that's something else. I would definitely recommend this book. You're like, Sarah, you've recommended this a million times because it's a really good book. Let me think about. But something fun. You're like, oh, we're 20 minutes in. This is a rambling Schauer Thoughts. I do want to remind you guys. So this podcast is called Schauer Thoughts, and Schauer Thoughts are rambling musings. I do actually have the neuroscience of Schauer Thoughts here, and what's cool about that is, why you may do your best thinking in your shower. It's going to incorporate everything I just said. So seemingly mindless activities are mindful experiences that put us in the moment and can lead to the state called flow. So I'm putting you guys in flow state. Ceasing from deliberate thought, you can yield unexpected insights from ideas incubating in the subconscious background. So cerebellum is going to be like subconscious background. So solitary activities let us disconnect from the outside world. They can become meditative intervals that open us up to new perspectives. Ever wonder why a good shower relaxes your imagination and body, or why it seems to release a stream of creative thoughts about a problem that may have vexed you? The answer lies in the fixed amount of attention your brain has to work with at any given moment. This biological limit is why trying to multitask so often degrades performance and leads to mistakes. And again, you cannot actually split your attention. You can only switch. So when the rational mind focuses on a problem, it eats up most of your allocated bandwidth, whereas letting the mind wander while you carry out a mindless task lets your subconscious thoughts roam beyond the activity at hand. By mindless, I mean a relatively automatic routine such as walking, driving a habitual route, following your exercise workout, hiking in nature, or yes, taking a shower. But also I will say, Schauer Thoughts, I did have quite a few episodes on cognitive labor and working memory. Working memory was literally math. So you guys are like, that was not relaxing. I understand, but this is a more relaxing shower. That was an everything shower where you're like, all right, I have places to be after this. But these are all solitary activities that let us disconnect from the outside world. They can become meditative, relaxing intervals that open us up to new ideas and perspectives. An additional benefit of the shower is that its white noise blocks outside stimulation. The roar of the water produces partial sensory deprivation, taking bandwidth that would have been used for other perceptions and shunting it to the mental space that the mind uses to wander. Ideas incubating in the background can rise to consciousness and lead you past a creative impasse. Carving out mental space and freeing the mind of deliberate thought is a proven incubator of creative insight. The lack of outside stimulation can lead to the state of flow, in which we are deeply, if absent-mindedly, engaged with other contemplations. And if you'd like to access flow outside of a shower setting, I do have an episode on method acting, which silences, ego is offline, right? And, it's you embody someone else. You're doing their movements. So I'm bringing it all together. This is what Schauer Thoughts is about. So two widely agreed features of Schauer Thoughts are that they are insights from the subconscious and the result of not thinking deliberately about anything. Sometimes breakthroughs occur in an aha moment. Two features of this kind are insight are the need for relative mental quiet and the suddenness with which they arrive when not intentionally thinking about the problem at hand. Walking is another mindfulness, or should I say mindful activity that grounds in the present moment, right? Like grounding, conceptual grounding is also important to understanding something, right? So if you have a concept, like a cliche, and it's lost all its meaning, it's slippery, you add its weight back to it and you ground the concept. And once you ground something in understanding, it hits more embodied understanding, and you're going to be able to remember and recall a lot easier. This is interesting because I'm also, you're like, Sarah, this is a bit rambling. This one is supposed to be rambling. So also what is interesting about Schauer Thoughts is that, flow in your default mode network is, I was looking into separately, how to get rid of noise reduction, and not just in, because I was talking about like inner monologue, inner thoughts, and inner monologue is noise. And so the thing is for noise reduction to work, I was looking at I took an engineering perspective instead of neuroscience this time. You need to align electrical, mechanical, and acoustic levels and functions. And so the same thing actually kind of applies, it does apply to your body, electrical, mechanical, and acoustic, what you hear. So you're aligning your electrical and your mechanical and the acoustic, because everything is being silenced around you in the shower, leading you to get to flow state, right? So a lot of people are like, you can't apply physics to the body. You can. Psychology stole most of their terms from physics. Physics is the foundation for psychology. So if you want to go up a level of abstraction and get to like brass tacks, you can go physics, but then you do have to incorporate biology, physiology, all this, and anatomy. Just make sure you didn't miss anything, because, you know, there's different levels to mechanical, like machinery versus like the human body, which is so cool. I did make before I get into the hypnotism thing, because the hypnotism thing is fairly brief, I did want to talk about, you know, research from this week, because a lot of people ask me what I study. I compiled a list from just these past couple days. Like, for example, back channels in conversation between autistic adults are less frequent and less diverse. Prosody and lexically. And so you're like, what are back channels? So a lot of autistic people, there's something called like your front channels, which is what you directly speak. And then there's the back channel, which is like gestures, facial expressions, like tone and pitch and intonation and all this stuff. And so a lot of times, well, actually, I think autistic person can relate. You're like, how come neurotypical people don't say what they mean? They do. They just haven't taught all the rules. They use front channel and back channel speaking, which is two, you know, things. And for autistic people, right, since back channel rules, which are like, you know, context, like implied context, no one teaches those explicitly. We're not really taught the rules of that. So all we're paying attention to is the front channel. So that's why I was looking into that. I want to make a full dedicated episode on this. Why don't neurotypical people say what they mean? They do. They just didn't teach all the fucking rules because they want to get away with sneaking in sly comments. And then I also have effects of noise type and noise sensitivity on working memory and noise annoyance, levels of noise and decibels. October is National Audiology Awareness Month and National Protect Your Hearing Month. So I was also, since I was researching hypnotic speech, I was, you know, your inner monologue is a type of noise, right? And so the thing is you can get a lot of noise in your head from, you know, acoustic trauma. And the thing is acoustic trauma can obviously be from the more obvious types of events where it's like an explosion or a gunshot going off like near your head. However, it's not just singular events, it's continuous events. People actually are kind of giving themselves acoustic trauma by putting on headphones and listening to music super, super high, damaging, you know, your inner ear. And the thing is your inner ear, and when it comes to like stability and, you know, feedback, it will noise in your head. It's going to cause more acoustic trauma. So you're kind of accidentally traumatizing yourself. So we do that all the time. There's, you know, I also, since I was looking into that, hair cell regeneration in the bird cochlea following noise damage or autotoxic drug damage. And then I have noise and vibration for refrigeration, air conditioning, and heat pumps. So, I mean, I'm just like literally looking into like every single type of like ways that you can get too much noise in any way and then see how it applies to your nervous system and your head. I also, oh my God, this is important. Let me wrap up this part. Okay. So I'll circle back to acoustics in a second. Last episode, I talked about how smell isn't critical to memory. This is something I should have realized sooner. Smell is absolutely critical to memory, right? So I should have So about 80% of the input, like this sensory input going into your body at any time is going to be vision, right? 10% is going to be sound. And then the other 10% is going to be taste, touch, and smell. However, the thing is smell is the only one that bypasses the thalamus. The thalamus, however, filters out like inputs, right? And it integrates what it keeps. However, what is filtered out, 99.999999% of incoming stimuli is filtered out except for smell, right? So smell is huge when it comes to memory. And the thing is I talked about last time, why smell has been so understudied, I feel like is because capitalism always emphasizes what you can profit off of. However, smells are incredibly hard to recreate, as there's so many, it's like you have to recreate like certain chemicals, and you can create perfumes, but like smells create memories, right? So with all of that being filtered out, but smell is the exemption to the rule, I cannot stress how important olfactory enrichment is to your memory. Oh my God, it is wild. But yeah, so if you're studying, open a window every couple hours or something like that. If you want to remember your life, you need to do some olfactory enrichment. And I did link everything in the previous podcast episode about, a refreshing take on brain rot. If you want to unrot your brain to some degree, then you should look into olfactory enrichment. Is that to say that it will fix, quote unquote, fix everything? No, but smell has been incredibly undervalued, and who decides value in our society is capitalism. And so if they can't easily recreate smell memories, and they can't market smell easily, they try with samples and perfume samples, but you can't push it out on an iPhone. They're going to undervalue smell. However, just because capitalism has undervalued smell does not mean that smell is not worthless. Holy shit, it's huge. I'm going to drink some water. So, okay. But yeah, and then I was just looking at white matter and gray matter, because stuff matters. I don't know. No, that's funny. Now, I'm going to talk about hypnotic speech patterns and why they matter. So a lot of times parents will accidentally use hypnotic speech techniques or phrases, and it will kind of, kids are highly suggestible, right? And so hypnotism is an altered state of awareness, not consciousness. And so awareness is going to be like movements and stuff. And if your parents accidentally, they can traumatize you, but then if they also accidentally use too many hypnotic speech phrases, they can lock you into place and kind of create a sort of learned helplessness. As most magicians, hypnotists have a release code. But if your parents don't realize, like, oh, I need to release, then you're going to be stuck. And that will contribute to a lot of learned helplessness. So I'm going to talk about that. I have to give a disclaimer, though. A lot of these phrases that your parents may have used that are hypnotic speech or fall under the category of hypnotic speech, since they were delivered in childhood, they could be load-bearing to your sense of self. And I am not a mental health professional, and you should definitely send, obviously, every single time, send what I talk about to a mental health care professional. But I'm going to talk about what hypnotism is, how it works, and then one phrase that parents accidentally use and why it is hypnotic speech. However, the rest of the phrases that are considered hypnotic speech, you'd have to work on with your therapist, as I can't give you advice on how to undo everything en masse if you are driving to work or whatever and you're like have a total loss of self. And you can see how this is incredibly damaging if you do it too quickly. A lot of autistic people, when we unmask, right, there's a total skill regression. And the thing is your programming quote in your childhood are kind of more your gross motor skills. And so if you're if you think about them as like gross motor skills, and then there's like fine motor skills, where gross motor skills are foundational to fine motor skills. If you get rid of, quote unquote, the gross motor skills, which is the you're performing, you put on a mask, you're pretending to be someone, you get rid of the performance, right? You're only left with some very, very flexible, unstable, fine motor skills. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and you're like, oh my gosh, why can't I do anything anymore? Well, because you built the skills upon a mask, right? Upon a character, upon someone that you don't actually align with. And then you undid that, and the foundation went away, and you're still left with the fine motor skills, but now it's just going to be really rocky. So undoing hypnotism stuff in mass is unwise and should be done with a mental health therapist. Also, it was kind of funny. I was reading about psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and hypnotism, like stage magic, like stage hypnotism. And there was so many like psychologists who were like, so stage hypnotism and like hypnotherapy are discrete, separate areas of study. And I was like, okay, if you're going to use a math term, discrete means that they are completely different. Their foundations are different. The mechanics are the same. They are not discrete. They are just different iterations. However, psychotherapists, hypnotherapists can treat. Stage hypnotists are there for entertainment purposes. So yeah, for performance. So again, autistic people, if you were kind of self-hypnotizing, creating this character that you believed was right, even though you disagreed with, you didn't understand why you're doing this character, you drop it right away, and then you've built fine motor skills upon it. You're like, oh, what's happening? So I'm going to talk about hypnotic speech patterns, but first we're going to take it back, because what it rests upon is the somatic nervous system. So the somatic nervous system is the body's voluntary command center. It's part of the peripheral nervous system, and it plays a role in voluntary movements and sensory processing. It's a carrier for motor and sensory signals to and from the central nervous system. This bodily system allows us to control our physical movement and process 4 of the 5 senses: smell, sound, taste, and touch. Unlike the autonomic system, which manages your involuntary functions, the somatic nervous system links your brain and muscles to put you in control. So notice that when I was talking about like smell is the only one that bypassed the thalamus, this is a separate thing if you're like, why is smell now included? So your somatic nervous system controls, our physical movement and processes 4 of the 5 senses. Now it's smell, sound, taste, and touch. Okay. And so I'm going to be talking about the phrase children should be seen and not heard. And that is called a double bind. There's something in sociology called like an oppressive double bind, and that is very much related. But this is a double bind with hypnotism where you give people 2 separate commands that are conflicting and it seems like there's an illusion of choice. However, if there's 2 conflicting commands that cannot be performed simultaneously, you're locked into place. Children shall be seen and not heard. Your eyes and your ears, right? Sound and eyes, they're mainly on separate systems. However, there is some overlap, but the way that it's phrased is going to kind of give you 2 commands at once and lock you into place. So I'm going to do that. Also, I need to rip this eyelash off. There's something in my eye. So there's 2 types of somatic nerves. There's cranial and spinal. And then I'm going to talk about automatic voluntary dissociation. So automatic voluntary dissociation refers to the differential completion of an action depending on the individual's attention to it. Dissociation can occur in either direction, like some illnesses or conditions result in relatively preserved automatic acting, involved reduced attention or effort, but impaired voluntary acting, which is involving increased attention or effort, whereas others have the opposite pattern. In addition, some illnesses can have both forms of dissociation. So automatic voluntary dissociation teaches that formal clinical testing that requires performing a command, right, which requires attention to the task, may underestimate or overestimate the ability to complete the same activity under spontaneous, real-world circumstances less attentively, right? Okay, so automatic voluntary dissociation teaches that formal clinical testing that requires performing a command. We're talking about a hypnotic command that has been delivered. And your eyes and your hearing are on different systems. They're using different nerves, and they're overlapping. And so the thing is you're going to have a hard time performing that command, overestimating, underestimating your ability. So again, why this matters, I'm talking about hypnotic speech patterns and methods. A common one being a double bind. So let's talk about let's talk about the mechanics of hypnosis. Children should be seen and not heard is a double bind. And a double bind with stage hypnotism are sentences that suggest your listener to do one of 2 things. However, it's actually an illusion of choice because either choice is the direction you want them to go. Okay? Your body, however, is not stupid, right? So your brain, your thoughts are hearing these simultaneous commands. However, your body is also, quote, listening and following the commands, right? So seeing is both an involuntary and a voluntary process involving a combination of conscious eye movements and unconscious reflex. Hearing is passive, involuntary function of sound perception. Listening is active and voluntary. Okay? So they're mixed, right? It's the wiring of this does matter. So children should be seen. That is a command for the adult, right? Children should be seen. But you're saying it to a child, right? And so when it comes to child-parent relationship, they've established rapport, established connection. Most parents see their child as an extension of themselves. Most people look up to, this is an authority figure that I trust, that loves me. We are one, right? I'm not going to go anywhere without my mom. So children should be seen. That is a command for the adult. The adult sees. The child is only seen if the adult sees them. So the child cannot control this. Children should be seen and not heard. And the thing is you will exist within your home. So that means the only thing you really can do in that scenario is hide, because it's if your parents decide to look around and see you, okay? So, but not heard, that is still a command for the adult, right? Children should be seen and not heard is what their principle, right? They're establishing principles that they're saying to you. And if you believe that you guys are communicating and sharing understanding, you're going to start applying that to yourself, okay? And the thing is when you interpret it backwards, you're getting a voluntary, involuntary mix, okay? This is a lot, but I'm explaining it's a lot, okay? So, but not heard, that is a command for the adult. This depends on the adult hearing involuntarily. The child can make sounds, and often must, as it's incredibly hard to do something completely quietly. Like, do you know how hard it is for a children to be completely silent, okay? So the child views themselves as an extension of parent. The parent is fusing them in their command. How you amplify a message or sound is by connecting the speakers to the amplifier, the ears of the child to the mouth of the adult, who definitely amplifies the message, right? Two conflicting demands shared with the child while they're in a highly suggestible state. Being a child, you are prompting them to hide, be invisible, stay put, don't make a sound, default, freeze response, okay? So, seen, not heard, okay? So you are allowed to be seen, but not heard. And the child is thinking under the assumption that that's how you act as well, though you're not a child, right? You're exempt from this. They're in a highly suggestible state. The thing is these are commands for you that they're taking on for themselves, okay? So the reason why hypnotists have to be confident is to build trust and reassure the participant who may be nervous or skeptical, which is why if you read books on magic and who magicians are most bugged by, they're most bugged by kids because kids ask them questions, right? However, the thing is you don't expect hypnotism from your parents. You blindly accept what they're saying, okay? You, children, should be seen and not heard. Seeing, hearing on two different systems, mixing up the commands, and now this is you're in a double bind, and I'm going to talk about what really seals the deal. So what solidifies this command, this double bind, is usually when your parents say that children should be seen and not heard, they tell you to nod your head yes if you understand me. So the thing is nodding your head is a deeply understood signal, like that involves the muscles, that yes, I am accepting this information, right? And so children should be seen, not heard. And there are two conflicting systems, and you're nodding, your muscles are accepting it, right? So your head and your body are accepting the message that children should be seen and not heard. And now you've created a very complex reflex. You've also created that's how hypnotic speech works. So nod your head yes if you understand. is what locks it in. And the thing is since this is a code that's encoded when you're a child, right? Everything is linked by association. If you code or if you program and you know how to code, you know that if you want to fix a lot of shit or fuck up a lot of shit really quick, you edit the first couple lines of code, right? It's not if you're reparenting yourself. A lot of people go. You're like, okay, I'm going to go back to my childhood. But the thing is there's so much shit woven together. Anywho, yeah. So basically nod your head if you understand. That is what locked it into place, most likely. Because I doubt that your parents ever said, shake your head no, if you don't want to. You don't want to? You didn't do that. And right. And so believe it or not, shaking your head no is what's going to get you out of this mess. So let's keep going. So, in stage hypnosis, I'm going to show you how your parents have actually done this. Okay, so with stage hypnosis, rapport is the foundation. It's also the foundation in real life, What We Value, the Neuroscience of Choice and Change by Emily Falk, Chapter 8, Small Acts of Sharing. Also, part 2 to that, rhythm and intonation are the first things your kid notices and clings to, right? How things move. Rhythm is how you move. If you read This Is What It Sounds Like by the neuroscientist I keep referencing, rhythm is movement, right? So your kid is noticing rhythm and movement. And one second. If you want to notice the development of language in a child, this is a little book of language. First thing your kid is going to pick up on after goo goo gaga is rhythm and intonation. Well, that's, rhythm and intonation. Okay. So also page 148 of What We Value, brain to brain synchrony isn't useful only for the intrinsic reward it provides. It's also a foundation for shared understanding that allows us to communicate successfully and work together between people and between your brain and your body, right? If your cerebral and your embodied knowledge are in sync, it is like grounded. You understand this like through and through. Okay, and so also page 182 of What We Value. In the early stages of building momentum for an idea or cause, highlighting the rising trend, more and more people are coming on board, increases people's willingness to act. Now, why that is relative is because in the early stages of building momentum, right, the early part of your life, you want to instill an idea or cause. You can also see how your parents kind of double down on this. All your friends are like, so respectful. Your friends, know how to sit still. Your friends know how to do all this stuff. They're giving you this idea, right? And they're instilling this idea, and then they're using supporting evidence, using the foundation, right? And then locking you into place further. Okay, so helping people feel part of a bigger whole can also make them not only more likely to take action personally, but also share with others and build even more momentum. And so again, trauma is cyclical. You need to break the cycle. Your parents were instilled with children should be seen and not heard. Then they pass it down to you. And then they keep reinforcing it with, oh, Johnny's a good boy. He sits still. He raises his hand when he's called upon. But other than that, he doesn't speak, right? And so momentum, I will talk about physics. Okay, so words have force. Force is an influence, like a parent, that causes a change in an object's motion, including speed, direction, and shape, right? Your velocity, your trajectory in life, right? Where you're going, what type of career you take on, and shape, your sense of self, okay? Hypnotic speech touches on, it edits self-awareness and sense of self. If you are highly suggestible, do not volunteer to on stage with a hypnotist, okay? You're going to be the person doing the monkey walk or like banging on your chest and all that stuff, okay? So just looping in the physics of it, the relationship between momentum and force is that force is the rate of change of momentum over time, right? Okay? So this is just because I love physics. So momentum is the product of an object's mass and its velocity. It is a vector quantity, meaning it has both magnitude and direction. Words, right? So your words have weight to them, and they also can come at you fast, right? If your parents are yelling commands at you quickly or continuously, right? And it can change, the momentum over time. If you were like, oh, I was more energetic as a kid, or like, oh, I was more adventurous, more creative, more resilient. And then the more that my parents yelled at me, applied words, locked me into place, I got slower. My rate of change slowed. Okay, so force is the push or pull that can cause a change in an object's motion. It's also a vector quantity, right? And so the thing is when it comes to connection, it's a two-way reciprocal thing, right? It's shared connection. When it comes to attachment, that's push or pull. And so if someone is not connecting with you genuinely, they just want to control you, you're going to feel pushed and pulled in different directions. Okay? Also, this is interesting because when it comes to vestibular cochlear, or it's like vestibular motor, which is like inner ear and motor hallucinations, a lot of people feel like they're floating. So whenever, like in movies, when someone's like, I have a devil on my shoulder or an angel on my shoulder, right? That actually references they're like something good or bad, right, is talking in their ear, right, and advising them. It's pushing and pulling them in different directions about what is good or what is bad, right? And what I talked about in the previous episodes, the force order of adjectives, what has the strongest force is an opinion, always. Good or bad is an opinion, right? So if the devil and an angel are sitting on your shoulder in a movie, right, floating, opinions in your inner ear, right? And so it pushes or pulls you. The arts are important to understanding physics, any concept, hypnotism, all this stuff. I mean, most magic is just physics and psychology. And so since they're both kind of based off the same thing, you can just fuse them together and understand it. Okay, so this is the connection of momentum and force. When a force acts on an object or a child, it changes the object's velocity, the speed, which in turn changes its momentum. So the product of force and the time it acts is called impulse and is equal to the change in momentum, okay? The product of force and the time it acts is called impulse, right? Release your inhibitions. Let go, push away, or if you have little impulse control. When your parents, right, yell at you spontaneously and they project insecurities, inadequacies on you, they have very little impulse control. And they're applying more force to you and your sense of self, and that can cause, like any force, can cause something to push or pull, speed up, accelerate, or deform it, right? Your sense of self is getting warped. Also, your thoughts can race. So you understand physics, you can understand why yelling at a kid, having low impulse control, is bad for a child. Okay? So I'm going to go back to stage hypnosis. This is what you do if you're a hypnotist. Rapport is the foundation. Parents already have a rapport. You're my kid. A kid believes that you genuinely want what's best for them. You love them, right? Rapport, trust, connection is established. 2, illusion of choice for a stage magician. The subject feels that they are making their own decision, which maintains their sense of agency while still complying with the underlying suggestion, okay? So the thing is children should be seen and not heard. It's phrased like the child has a choice. Oh, you can, you can be seen but not heard. However, it is the adult who will have to see you, okay? It's very hard to, it seems like the child has, oh, I do have a sense of agency, sense of self. You do not. You are going to do what the adult is telling you to do. They are making it seem like you are going to be doing this, like you have a choice in the matter. You do not have a choice. Okay, so, and there's also 3 for stage magic, reduce resistance. Since they trust the hypnotist, they are less likely to perceive the underlying manipulation, right, or deforming, or feel trapped in a negative way. Instead, they focus on the acceptable choices offered within this safe therapeutic alliance. Okay, however, they were not given a choice. If they were to do one or not the other, they would violate both of them, And so they're in a double bind. They have no choice. And then 4, sense of safety and cooperation. Generally feel safe and cooperative, believing the hypnotist is acting in their best interest. This positive feeling towards the hypnotist facilitates the acceptance of the suggestions embedded in a double bind. Okay? When you embed something, it is going to the foundation. Like, this is the core, this is the code that you're embedding in here. This is not a link sharing, right? Everything in your brain is linked by association. This is embedded in your core, and it's a double bind, okay? So if you want more about knowledge illusions, I have the knowledge illusion, why we never think alone, because beliefs are made with groups. However, beliefs, again, are, opinions are the strongest when it comes to, like, force. So there's just so much shit going on. People really fucked up kids. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to include that book in there. So all of this shit leads to learned helplessness. You actually cannot help yourself. Learned helplessness is embedded codes that are restrict movement, right? And so if you restrict someone's movement, you use the same cognitive map to map physical and social spaces. If you feel like you cannot move, right, you cannot map, okay? And so if you cannot map, you cannot develop the range, the possibilities, the opportunities to go different directions in life. You're going to beat yourself up and think that you're useless and can't do shit. Okay? So, again, what solidifies this in kids is nod your head yes if you understand, okay? So the thing is the your somatic nervous system is your senses, sight, sound, and muscles. And so you're locked into place with sight, sound, and here comes your muscles, and you're accepting what they're saying, their thought, and with the muscles you are nodding up and down, which is a universal signal that children learn that means, yes, I accept it. So you're accepting the embedded code and you're embodying the code. This is deep, okay? So, hypnotists lock commands by implanting post-hypnotic suggestions that are linked to specific triggers. Shaking, like, for example, shaking the head yes or no, do you understand? They're always going to tell you to move something, okay? And reinforced through techniques like repetition and emotional engagement, right? And so your parents are all doing all this shit accidentally, right? Repeating, like, children should be seen and not heard. Nod your head yes if you agree, right? Oh, and then they're emotionally charged during it. They're yelling at you. Children should be seen and not heard. They are reinforcing this embedded code, more like embodied code. I'm going to talk about automatic triggers. So these suggestions are accepted by the subconscious mind during a state of heightened suggestibility and can produce an automatic response later in the subject's waking state, when you are alert, awake, oriented, or when you're an adult, right, and you're more aware of your surroundings. Okay? So now I'm going to go into an automatic trigger. So an automatic trigger, this is now the realm of the reflex arc, which is a different part of the nervous system. With the reflex arc, you have monosynaptic reflexes. They are involuntary rapid responses to a stimulus that involves only a single synapse between a sensory neuron and a motor neuron. So a monosynaptic reflex is something like a stretch reflex, right? So a lot of times if you go to somatic therapy, they insist on stretching, and that is very, very intentional, as a monosynaptic reflex is going to be sensory neuron and, a motor neuron are, so you got it. That's stretching that out kind of releases that, and it travels. It's kind of like, it's editing the body, and then it'll edit the brain because the nervous system is a two-way system. So if you stretch, you're going to release motor and sensory, or like stretch out motor and sensory association, okay? So there's also a polysynaptic reflexes. They're complex involuntary responses involving multiple synapses and interneurons within the central nervous system, most notable in the spinal cord. Complex actions like the withdrawal reflex. Okay? So withdrawing into yourself. the feeling of wanting to hide, wanting to run away. So when it comes to learned helplessness, right, you feel like you're constantly in fight, flight, or freeze. And then, so you have the withdrawal reflex, which is complex. And so the thing is this is a trigger. And so if your parents have unknowingly locked you into place, and as you grow up, you become more aware, and there is no release. There's not even monosynaptic reflex release, right? Like stretching. This is going to get more complex, and you're going to withdraw into yourself. This is why a sense of shame, once you withdraw, right? You are shamed. You believe that you're fundamentally bad. You're fundamentally broken. You cannot be fixed. You don't know who you are, right? You think who you are is bad. Now, there's a lot more to this than your parents accidentally, hypnotize you. I'm saying it definitely did not help that most parenting cliches are accidental hypnotism techniques and a lot of propaganda from the government, because a double bind is something that you see with a lot of, oppressive authoritarian regimes, right? Children or like women should be, thin but not too thin, or women should be sultry but like not a whore, or like the Madonna whore complex is a double bind. And so the thing is these types of techniques, and there's more that I'm gonna list and link, are utilized accidentally with a lot of parents and a lot of salespeople. And salespeople, oh my gosh, capitalism. Yeah. So, and we're raised in a capitalistic society. So yes, a lot of the parenting cliches are hypnotist techniques. Obviously, there's a lot more to trauma. Therapists, I already hear you writing. And therapists, I'm sorry that I'm about to give you some people asking about hypnotism now. But but I'm saying there's a lot more to trauma. But this definitely does not help. Okay. So, this is some more information about polysynaptic reflexes. It involves, again, interneurons. This is the main difference from monosynaptic reflexes, which involve a direct connection between a sensory and motor neuron. It allows for complex actions. The presence of interneurons allows for more complex coordinated movements, such as the withdrawal reflex, and can be modulated. Unlike monosynaptic reflexes, polysynaptic reflexes can be inhibited or modified by conscious thought or higher brain centers. Did you hear what I just said? Right? So monosynaptic reflexes can be like modified or inhibited, which means someone can heighten them for you. Someone can also take away from them, for you, less inhibition, more withdrawal, role in survival by allowing a rapid involuntary withdrawal from a painful or harmful stimulus. They are a crucial protective mechanism. So the mechanism, what's all connected here? So head nodding involves a combination of cognitive, social, and motor processes. It is the nonverbal cue for agreements. Okay, and like I talked about in the way beginning, right? You have front channel speech, which is what you're directly saying. Back channel speech is going to be like the implied sort of things. Nod your head if you agree, or like roll your eyes if you're sarcastic, or like, kind of look around the room, like shifty eyes, or, you're looking for other people to join in and laughing, right? Those are the more back channel, okay? So motor control is regulated by specific neural pathways, while cognitive and emotional responses are linked to the act through embodied effects, affecting likability and reinforcing judgments. Do you not like yourself? Do you judge yourself pretty harshly? Well, again, there's a lot more to it, but the hypnotic phrases from your parents and the locking you, did you agree to this? It does not help. So, I'm going to give some more articles, grounding by nodding. I also have this article by science.org. Watch how you nod. Head shaking might change confidence in thoughts, beliefs about self. Okay. Imagined and real movements are controlled by the brain in the same way. So I'm going to get careful with this. So if you visualize, right, when you have a flashback memory to maybe something where you have a flashback memory to your parents saying children should be seen and not heard. You can remember like the most vivid time they said it. They're like, nod if you agree. Don't shake your head at me, dipshit. If you want to help yourself in that scenario, you have a vivid flashback in the specific case I'm talking about. Children should be seen and not heard. Nod if you agree, right? Or don't backtalk me, right? What you can do in those moments is physically shake your head no, as if you are shaking your head no in a normal conversation. Don't do something dramatic where your body is like, what are you doing here? I mean, like, when you flashback specifically to that memory, run this by your therapist, read all these articles, right? If you want, because your nervous system is a two-way street, and your thoughts are getting overwhelmed with thoughts, and you're having like these, horrible things, shake your head no, or do like with your hands, thumbs down, shake your head no, something where your motor nerves, like your sense and your somatic system, can go again against the stream, right, and help you out of this situation, because your thoughts are on lockdown. And so again, it goes thoughts, movements, feelings, sensing. Get movement and sensing to do distinct movements that your cerebellum remembers, because this cerebellum is your second brain. Your cerebellum is going to like, all right, we're going to move some things along. We're going to change this. We're going to edit it, right? Because, motor control by specific neural pathways, while cognitive and emotional responses are linked to the act through embodied effects. Edit the motor of what you're doing with symbols or gestures that you would recognize as no, relative to you. If you shake your head no, when you're having this flashback, right, and you're trying to get out of it, yes, screaming you could scream, but like if you want to quicken things, undo some stuff, not everything, shake head no, thumbs down, right? Anything that would indicate to your muscles that you've done quite frequently that you are disagreeing, you are not accepting the message, okay? Because the thing is you can feel actual pain by having a flashback to a memory. You can re-experience that pain. However, you can edit, right, how much it hurts by this time doing a motor gesture that indicates that you do not agree with what is happening or said to you in this context. Again, it will not undo everything. And if you have PTSD, if you have any sort of, please take this to a therapist. This is just if you want release in some way. All right. So yeah, also when please run this by a therapist. Don't close your eyes when you're having these flashback scenarios. Eyes how they would normally be, and just shake your head no at how you would normally shake your head no. So you're yes, okay? I also do have like chapter 8, hypnotic phenomena and keeping techniques. So the thing is hypnotic phenomena can include subjective changes as well as behavioral responses to each suggestion. This chapter presents descriptions of 2 or more profound types of phenomena: delusional phenomenon and dissociation phenomenon that can be elicited with hypnosis. Keys to successful hypnotic inductions, a technique to help resistant patients respond to hypnosis, and effective deepening protocols. It provides techniques that have been found to elicit hypnotic responses beyond what might be predicted. Voluntary behaviors can be carried out without hypnosis, using methods ranging from mere suggestion to simple directions to role-playing, which gets you in a flow state, by the subject to please the hypnotist. Now, this is like, I'm editing it backwards because I'm not trying to hypnotize you. I'm saying like literally role-playing. Get embodied cognition, get your muscles online and do the actions. Perform as someone else when you're imagining or you're in real life. The chapter discusses the experience of an involuntary automatic action, which can be demonstrated by the CONSTEM phenomenon. The verbal nonverbal dissociation technique builds upon the CONSTEM phenomenon. It is worth attempting even when those who have scored. Okay, yeah. So the CONSTEM phenomenon is how you can see pitting an automatic and an involuntary, like a voluntary and involuntary action against each other. If you've ever stood in a doorway and pressed your arms to, against the doorway, and you do it for enough time, when you step out of the doorway, your arms are going to lift. And so that lifting feeling right, is the pitting of voluntary and involuntary like movements against each other, and it's going to lift. Isn't it interesting how when you have certain, yeah, okay, so that's, that's going to change, how you feel about yourself, your sense of self. You feel higher, right? There's also the feeling of falling, which can happen if you have inner ear muscle hallucinations. That's why a lot of, I have this whole theory going about, circling back to, angel or devil on your shoulder. A lot of times with cognitive dissonance or distortions, right? Beliefs do not align with real life, or beliefs do not align with how your body is, right? And the more you push away or tune people out, however, your body is still taking in information. When you pit a voluntary and involuntary sense against each other, you're going to get this feeling of lifting, especially when it comes to like ears, or falling. And then it can accelerate, deform your thoughts, and lead to a whole bunch of interesting dissociation or delusion phenomenon. Okay, so yeah, that is what I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to include examples of hypnotic speech patterns. Hopefully this made sense. Children should be seen and not heard is not a good one. So if you say that to your kids, you are just no. The thing is this the thing is this builds someone's default mode network, right? Like their sense of self, like how they feel like they behave normally, or like what they're capable of. And if you have PTSD, please run this by a therapist, obviously, because the thing is you also have. It depends on where the PTSD is coming from, and also I'm not a medical professional. Always run everything I say by a mental health professional. I'm just saying, accidentally using hypnotic speech patterns, which parents, salespeople, and capitalism does, right? Messages, you internalize them, you agree to them subconsciously, consciously. You could be locking yourself in a place, having limiting beliefs about yourself, since your brain uses the same cognitive map to map physical and social context. If you believe you cannot do anything, you cannot move in different directions. Learned helplessness contributes to hopelessness, right? I would strongly suggest looking into a hypnotherapist, reviewing all the resources, talking to your therapist, sending this to your therapist, and giving this podcast a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube. Sorry, I'm coughing. But this has been the episode. New episodes every Wednesday. Happy belated Halloween. I hope you all are doing well, all things considered. The president is an idiot. I might bleep that out, but you guys, he's an idiot. Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been, you're like, was this relaxing? I don't know if this is relaxing. I'm thinking it is. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.